I've got a small shop with a lot of stuff squeezed into it. I bought a CNC router and I didn't have a good place to put it, so I decided to make it disappear. Let's take a look at how I did it. Maybe you'll get some ideas for your own shop. I started out by looking for examples of people using folding and tilting tables to store Shapeokos and other hobby CNC machines in small spaces. I played around with an idea or two, but my walls are already pretty full of shelves and bikes, so I couldn't find a way to make a fold-up design that I liked. My floor space is limited too, so there's only one place left to go, on the ceiling. If I want to make the Shapeoko disappear, first I'll have to make the table it sits on disappear. I worked through a couple folding concepts before settling in on a design that can be built from a single sheet of plywood. Pretty happy with that. It's only 2 sheets thick when it's folded up too, so it sits nice and tight against the wall. As you'd expect, building the legs starts with transferring all the CAD geometry onto the plywood. This design has a lot of cuts that don't start at an edge, so I plunge cut with a circular saw and finish up the corners with a jigsaw. Now we just got to make all the cuts until the outer frames and the folding side panels are separated and ready to assemble. The pieces are all held together by continuous piano hinges and a whole lot of screws. That's one joint complete. 5 more and the legs are assembled. Check it out, it works just like the CAD model. For the tabletop, I just made a simple torsion box out of MDF. If it works as advertised, this is a great way to get a relatively stiff and light surface to set the machine on, and it's pretty cheap to build too. I cut out all the parts, then it was just a matter of gluing everything together. I used trim nails to hold the pieces in place while the glue was still wet. After setting the top piece, I just piled a bunch of heavy things on it to clamp it down and waited for the glue to dry. Now it's time for the first test fit. It's just a little bit more wiggly to get it put together than I had hoped, but all in all it's working pretty well. I'm pretty happy. After some careful measuring, I realized I could use the space between my ceiling trusses to hide the x-axis and cutting head of the router. Now I should be able to tuck the y-axis rails all the way up against the ceiling so I don't bump my head on it when it's stored. Now that we know where it's going to go, we've got to make a way to get it there. Harbor Freight to the rescue! I'm going to mount the hoist on an upside down shelf and run cables through the truss space over to the hole I just made for the router. I'll use a block and tackle to slow the hoist down and increase its load capacity too. Conveniently, all my master bath plumbing is in the truss space I'm using for the cables, but there's just enough room to squeeze a guide pipe through. The block and tackle gets to stay inside the pipe all the time too, so there's no chance of it getting caught on anything up there. The hoist is just mounted to the wall upside down, and there's a block for the dead end of the cable in the first pulley. The CNC tabletop has eyelets, and it's lifted by cables with S-hooks, so that I can unhook it from the hoist and move it around the shop whenever I want to use it. Speaking of moving it around, I use these sweet removable casters, so I can have a solid base when I want it, but roll it around super easily too. Just press them down to lift the table and roll away. I'd say it works pretty well. The Shapeoko can go from in use to totally out of the way in about a minute, and you can go from fully stored to ready to go in like 2 or 3. The trickiest part of the whole process is getting the table to set down inside the legs. I've definitely gotten better at it since shooting this clip, but still, watch your fingers. Well, I wasn't, but I should have been. A friend came over, so I had him lower the table to show off my new toy. I'll skip the details to protect the innocent, but the gantry slid to one side, threw everything off balance, and the whole machine slid off onto the floor. Yikes. Fortunately, I was able to repair everything pretty easily. I straightened bent sheet metal, I replaced some broken screws, I replaced the busted V-wheels, and we're good to go again. The moral of this story: if you build one of these yourself, come up with a way to lock the gantry when it's stored, and make sure you screw the machine down to the table. All's well that ends well though, and I've been using this thing regularly for over a year now, and I am very happy with it. So glad I built it. Thanks for coming along on this ride with me. I hope you enjoyed watching.